Hello, everyone. My name is Shaun Ferrari. I'm the Global Cash Product Director here at Currency Research, and thank you for joining us on our new series of CR Conversations. We look forward to seeing you back and forth over the coming months periodically as we host different leaders from the cash and payments industries to hear what's on their mind and talk about the most topical issues facing our industry. So thank you again for joining us for this short conversation. And our first guest on our series is Mr. Michael Lambert. I'd like to bring him in now and say hello and welcome.
Well, thank you. Good to be here.
Nice to see you. This is Michael Lambert. Hopefully most of you watching know him, but for those that don't, Michael is the former Banknote director with the Federal Reserve System, having worked at the Federal Reserve Board for many years, and is now most recently retired. So thanks for taking some time out of your day to join us.
Yeah. My pleasure.
No, thank you. I think, as you had, obviously one of the biggest things happening this past year has been the pandemic, and you retired amidst all of that. So
Wow.
maybe we could just start with that. So happy retirement, and how are things going? How was it to retire amidst all this craziness?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that I have nothing to complain about. I think, obviously, thinking about people who suffered greatly as a result of the virus, I certainly have nothing to complain about. Obviously, it'd be nice to be retired and be able to move on to do the kinds of things that you would like to do in retirement, and so the restrictions there are what they are. But by and large, after 41 years of working, it's kind of fun to be in a new role and looking to do different things. And so co-chairing the currency conference and banknote conferences, I think is a real pleasure for me.
Yeah, no, and it's an honor for us to have you do that. I mean, I think particularly as we've blended the banknote and currency conference together this upcoming year in 2022, it was the perfect fit to have someone like yourself who has led both aspects, kind of the technology aspect in note development at the Fed, as well as obviously the policy areas and the issuance area. So I think bringing those two together, you're the perfect co-chair for this event, and it should work out very, very well. So thanks for doing that. In thinking of kind of the combined conferences, I was going to ask, with the pandemic, it's been hard, I think, or I get your opinion, for people to get together and talk like they normally have. And I'm wondering if you saw any effects of that, or what your thinking was as you were at the Fed for the beginning part of the pandemic. Did you see kind of any effects of being unable to get together as an industry like we have for so many times?
I think so, for sure. I think getting together in person is really important, particularly at these larger conferences, because naturally everyone wants to hear the presentations, but there's also an opportunity to meet face to face with others who are there for the conversations that take place at the conferences that I think everyone really values. Those types of conversations are obviously not particularly easy to do in this environment. I'd also say, sort of in the beginning of the pandemic, just getting used to new technologies was a challenge for a lot of folks. So things didn't work well. I think most folks have figured that out now, but it sure would be great to be in person again. I think there's really no good substitute for the interactions that'll happen at the conference.
Yeah, I think we've seen that too. We've done some fairly successful virtual events over this time period, but you definitely have a limit to what you can do on the networking side. The educational content and the panels can be really good, and you can bring on some interesting speakers in a virtual environment. It's hard though to continue that networking and have discussions, as you say, that you can have in person. Do you think kind of, we've combined these two industry events into one for this year to get everybody together. I'm curious on your thoughts as having attended both and having helped the Fed kind of decide who to send to the different conferences and events. what is it that some central banks or others should think about as they plan to attend the banknote and currency conference, having merged both the technology and policy conferences into one? Is it a different delegation set they should be thinking about, or what types of issues or thoughts should they be mulling over?
Right. So certainly, I fully appreciate and understand merging the two for one of the first conferences coming off of the pandemic, in-person conferences. I think from my perspective, I saw those two conferences as being quite different. And many, from the central bank perspective, many central banks were sending more of their technical representatives to the banknote conference and the policy people to the currency conference. So I think central banks, on that side, will sort of have to think about, combining them and having both the technical discussions as well as the policy discussions. What is the right mix for them of people to attend? But it makes perfect sense for me. I think the question is for the future. Will they be separated again or not? I can certainly see an argument for them to be separated, but that remains to see where folks come out on that.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's definitely a conversation we continue to have as we think about the future and where we go. I mean, I think, as you say, the content is typically quite different on the technology on the banknote side, and the policy strategy more on the currency conference side. And as we've been working on the agenda for this blended conference, we do hope to really kind of bring those together and have a cohesive discussion around both the technology and policy aspects. But going forward, there's definitely still strong arguments to keep kind of the policy and technology to their own events. But as I said, it's an ongoing evolution discussion to see where things go.
Right.
And also with the currency conference, as we noticed in Dubai, the conversation and the agenda bleeds a little bit into the payment space too, as we start talking about more things like a digital currency or central bank digital currencies in particular, and how that affects the cash cycle or financial inclusion, those types of topics. And we may see more of a continued trend in that direction, bringing more of that kind of digital currency aspect into currency conference discussion. It's a hot topic, as you know.
Yes, that's right. I mean, I think having on the agenda, having that topic makes a lot of sense. I mean, my personal opinion on that is this is a currency conference, and I like having topics that pertain to the cash business. And with the pandemic, there's a lot to be learned yet. I know that central banks and others have been talking quite a bit. I'm sure the printers have been talking as well, and suppliers. But I think from the central bank perspective, having everyone come together to learn from one another and the various experiences, we think we all understand what's going on with each other, but there are always nuances that we can learn from one another. So I think having that topic is really important. Obviously, digital currencies is a topic. Central banks have been studying this for a while. Jerome Powell just came out with something just in the news the other day about that from the Fed's perspective. So I think there's a lot of interest in sort of where that's heading.
Yeah, and where it's headed and the effect that it has on our industry, and again from the financial inclusion standpoint, also from we've heard a lot of interesting stories too of different central banks around the world are starting to move a little bit on this. Some from smaller, more closed economies where it's a little easier to try things than maybe in a U.S. environment or an ECB type situation. But nonetheless, I mean, it's definitely something to talk about. I guess from the agenda standpoint too, what other topics do you think are most pressing? We're gonna obviously we're forming the agenda. COVID will be a theme that we'll talk about. Obviously the effect on the industry. We don't want to overdo it, as I think a lot of people have talked about it. But at the same time, this is the first chance to get people together and have kind of in-person discussions about it. So it's something we want to cover. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on topics or? or what you'd like to see discussed?
Yeah, I mean, personally, given the amount of time it's been since we've been together, discussions around innovation on various policy issues and production technology issues is always interesting to me. Particularly being retired, staying current in terms of what's going on. But I think for everyone, that's a very very important topic. So I think counterfeit deterrence is always a big topic. Where are things going in terms of security feature work? That's interesting both to the policymakers as well as the technical people. So I think that's a very important topic as well. Just two examples, I think, of really key topics that would be good to hear at that joint conference.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I think the other one that I've had some conversations this week with some folks in the U.S. market here, and our steering committee, when we had a call with them, brought up the fact that they want to dig down a little deeper into the cash cycle than we may have before at the events, just to hear how some of these changes are affecting whether it's retailers or the CMCs, things that we have typically talked about at some smaller regional conferences we do, but haven't necessarily spent a lot of time with at kind of the global events here. So I think folks are looking for, whether it's COVID or the shift to touching currency less, or the different technologies that are out there in terms of cash recyclers, what has that done further down the cash cycle, and what does that then mean for the producers and the issuers of currency?
Yeah, I think that's a really important topic. With COVID, obviously, in the early days, people couldn't even go anywhere, use cash. Everything was, pretty much online. As things began to open up, what's going to happen? What are the experiences now? What do we expect them to be? I personally would love to hear where countries are coming out on those topics. So I think that'd be a very interesting addition to the conversation.
Yeah, we think so. It seems to have quite a bit of traction. The other interesting thing is, we had some questions come about like, well, will folks be ready to travel? Are they gonna make the commitment? And so far it looks like things are rounding the corner, and we are having some good chatter and some good sign up. So it looks like that. But we are trying this to be a hybrid event as well, so that we can do some virtual programming for those that can't travel. And we've heard, from different folks that might lead to the ability for people to send kind of people that wouldn't normally get to attend, could attend virtually. So we might be able to have a more junior staff or training staff that might not be able to attend, be able to watch and hear things. Do you think, having led the section at the Fed for quite some time, that would have been an uptake or something you would have considered as a leader there, being able to send some more people virtually anyway to be involved rather than in person?
Well, certainly, I think for many countries who, this is going to be sort of the first experience of people getting back together. Hopefully, right? We're all very hopeful that we're going to get out in front of this around the world. But for the Fed, it was a bit easier than for others, since the Banknote conference was typically held in Washington. And so from my perspective, where there would be people better suited to attend from the Fed, so the currency technology office, for example, down in our Richmond Fed, would be people who would definitely want to attend that. I might be sending some of my more technical people rather than me attending that myself. But with it being in Washington, of course, I always attended them as well. But I do think from the standpoint of other countries, it's a great opportunity for folks who they can't send everyone, right? So those folks can participate virtually, while you can send the people that you really feel you need to have at the conference itself. So I think it's a real plus. I'll be interested to see how countries take advantage of that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. We'll all see what happens, and yes, we are all hopeful that things are in a place next February that we can get together, because it is something that I think the industry really needs to get back together and talk and re-engage with people. I think it's one of those times, and you and I have had this conversation as we worked together for many years about, how much new really happens from year to year to year. And there's always a few things, but a lot of things, it takes a while to develop. I think this is one of those times when there's likely been a lot of things that have happened over the past year. And it'll be interesting to see some of those things and hear about them, because I think everybody's communication channels aren't what they used to be. So,
well, and the in-person conferences, from my perspective, was a catalyst for new things to come about, right? I mean, because I think having those conversations with your colleagues up both on the technical side and the policy side, with folks who can help us solve whatever problem it is we're trying to solve for, in person has always worked better for me, and so I think that'll be really, really useful for folks to come back together and have those conversations yet again.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with that. Well, with that, I think we're about out of time, and it's a great message to end on. So thank you. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes and chatting with us.
My pleasure.
We've appreciated it, and we will look forward to seeing you probably on some additional virtual things between now and February, but at the latest next February in DC in person.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. It'll be fun to catch up with people. Since I retired during the pandemic, it was a bit awkward from that perspective. So it'll be great to see everyone there.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. All right. With that, thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in the coming weeks with future conversations.